Thank you for being here today. You know, we wanted to have this financial inclusion discussion, which is billed as, I think, the financial inclusion revolution. So first question, is it a revolution right now?
It's going to be, and has been.
It has been, okay.
And is going to be.
Oh, I think by far it is a revolution. But if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind taking one step back and saying, why should anyone even care about financial inclusion?
Right.
You know, we're here in New York where you can take for granted that there are banks on every corner and ATMs and credit cards, and you can get insurance for your family and your home. And but for 2 billion people, they have none of that.
Right.
And their lives are so much harder than they have to be. And we now have the technology and the innovation and the revolution that can really change that. And so there's this, we've seen, and Mark Sussman was just talking about it, there's an incredible moment in human history where we have seen, over the last several decades, hundreds of millions of people move out of poverty.
Right.
But now that's all stalled.
Right.
And being reversed. But we've also seen a revolution in digital technology that is affecting all of our lives, but has enormous consequence for how we can reach people who have been left out. So it's a very exciting moment in our field.
Very exciting moment. Sorry, just a moment. I'm going to ask if we can close the door in the back, please, just because we're getting a lot of noise in, and I think if anyone near it could close it, that would be amazing. So obviously, Accion, global nonprofit. You have BNP Paribas, a private financial institution. Do you two see yourselves as competitors? Do you see yourselves as partners? How do you think, and have you worked together actually? What's the relationship?
So not yet with Accion, but we see each other all the time, and we are completely collaborating, so not at all competitive. I would say in this sector there is no competition. I mean, and until the moment there is one single person who is out of the banking system or who is trapped by poverty, there is no competition, we're just collaborating. So this is the first point. And then, of course, you are doing an incredible job through the microfinance institutions that you have been creating across the world. And those institutions, in the end, are small banks, but they are not having the status of a bank, so they need financing.
Right.
And so the role of other companies like we are, so the financial institution, is also about financing those small financial institutions. And so it's really a complete collaboration, and which starts with philanthropy. We have been hearing about this. And after the philanthropy, there is the need of funding.
Right.
And with the funding, then there goes also the spectrum of the support to be given to the micro borrowers, to the non-bankable who are benefiting by this help.
Yeah, so talk about this idea. So you see private financial sector as being a kind of catalyst, a opportunity for scale, it sounds like, and a market maker. But you talk about, you know, this idea of people who are, quote, too expensive to serve. Mark, I know you've thought a lot about that, and you think it's a myth or a misnomer. Is that correct?
So it used to be, in the world of financial inclusion, trying to reach people living in poverty, it used to be that people thought the distances were insurmountable.
Right.
Today there's no such thing. It used to be that the transaction sizes were too small to be commercially viable. Today there's no such thing. It used to be really hard to know your clients remotely, but today with data and data analytics, we can know and understand our clients' needs remotely. And so all of that is changing. So the assumptions that used to be there are no longer the case. So just coming back to your previous question, we don't see any competition. In fact, this is a movement. We need everybody. We're trying to reach 2 billion people for whom the banking system just fails. We need all the help we can get. There's a movement.
The market is bigger than the number of people competing for that market currently, it seems.
And this market is also here. So it's in all the emerging countries, but it's also here in the States. It's also here in New York. For instance, there's Grameen America. It's here in New York, and they're doing a great job by banking women who are out of the banking system. So, and it's also in Europe. So it's not only these 2 billions are mostly in the emerging markets, but it's also people that you see every day, and that is lacking the access to a good financial system.
Makes sense. And I'm curious, you know, I know, Michael, you're particularly excited about new technologies. Both of you have a kind of a front door view. I'm sure you're constantly having technologists come in and show you their new products, and you're thinking a lot about AI maybe and how that helps you with either due diligence or rural access. Tell me what technologies you've seen, each of you, that are going to help overcome this kind of too expensive to serve. And the more specific you can be, I think the more helpful for people in the room.
So I'm quick to point out, everyone's talking about AI, but the rage is generative AI is the new, but
yes.
AI has been around for more than a decade.
Right.
Truly original, old-fashioned AI.
Just like the
I can't believe I'm even
algorithm.
saying that, but like data and data analytics at scale is allowing us to see people who have been invisible until now. And there's been the real explosion, the real revolution is all sorts of new sources of data that allows us to really understand the needs of our clients. It used to be the only way you could get credit from a bank is if you had already gotten credit from a bank and give a FICO score. And then the revolution in microfinance was circles of women vouching for each other. But now we have phones and we have global satellite data and we have all sorts of new sources of data that is allowing to and it's artificial intelligence, it's AI, it's algorithms and decision analytics that's allowing us to really see people we've never been able to reach before.
Right. And yourself, Claudia?
Well, I think that the largest revolution for the sector of the financial inclusion was the mobile banking, because thanks to the mobile banking, everybody could access to the mobile services, and then it's not communication, it's also the banking, the possibilities to get a loan, to reimburse the loan, to get a payment, to pay, to have a credit score in the end.
Right.
And this goes back to the AI.
Yes.
So
Mobile banking, digital public infrastructure was the big catalyst.
And then the second point, which is very digital, is the training. Because thanks to the digitalization, everybody can learn, everybody can access to the education, to the financial education, or to any kind of educational tools that can exist. And this creates an empowerment.
You were asking for a specific technology.
Yeah.
So in the last few years, global satellite imagery has gotten super high quality and extraordinarily cheap. And we're seeing companies that are using that technology to see and understand the needs of smallholder farmers in remote locations. So all of a sudden with satellite data, you can see when there's a drought, you can see when there's a flood, you can actually monitor soil condition and cloud coverage, you can provide agronomic advice, and all of a sudden a remote smallholder farmer is insurable. And this is a person who, in an area where she may be subject to droughts and floods, and until now we've never been able to insure her. And this is a big, this is really, really important.
Kind of information that empowers
especially in the
you.
climate crisis. Exactly.
But there's also the downside of this technology, right?
Yeah.
And the financial sector has seen this. There's been huge numbers of hacks. I mean, one of the challenges of generative AI, as kind of warned by the FTC and other Cassandras here, I would say, is around safety of that information, right? The hackability, the vulnerability of people to scams, the ability of generative AI to kind of mimic at scale different accounts or humans. What advice do you have to governments, to technologists, to people, as we think about bringing a whole number of people online who haven't been doing mobile banking? What safeguards should be in place?
So a few different issues there. One, you're absolutely right. Generative AI and the large language models can only be trained on the data they have, and that in and of itself can be exclusive, right? Excluding.
Yes.
But go back to AI over the last decade. Algorithmic lending has transformed, again, how we can reach people we've never been able to reach before, and I'll give you an example. We're a very active investor in early stage fintech companies that are using new technologies to reach the poor. Many of them use how you use your phone as a proxy for, are you likely to repay a loan?
Right.
And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. If you top up your phone and recharge your phone regularly, you're more likely to repay your loan than someone who fails, who runs out of money or runs out of power. All that makes intuitive sense and is built into algorithms, except for one thing. Women have the family phone. Men have their own phone. women's phones systematically run out of power and money. And so we are designing algorithms that systematically discriminate against women. We have to get much more sophisticated about this.
Has the system not gotten more sophisticated around women?
Yes, but it's still early days.
So what is the
And they're black boxes.
what is the gender inequality in terms of banking right now? Maybe share some data with the audience. Do you have?
It's still 5 basis points of difference. So
5 basis
the
points.
excess of the digitalization and the excess of banking services, women still lag behind. And although this was 9 basis points like 10 years ago, now it's decreasing, but it's still there.
So, okay, it's gone from 9 to 5. And you mentioned before that the market for these products is not just in Asia and Africa and Latin America, it's also here. Is that gender inequity visible in kind of Western markets as well?
Yeah, the gender inequity is hidden many times. You really don't see it and you do perceive it. If you just go to an example, when you think about economic abuse, domestic economic abuse, this is all over. It can go from a village in Africa where the woman doesn't have an access to banking payments, to any access, but it can be here. It can be here by a partner saying, you don't have to work, I'll consider everything, and then several years after, why did you spend so much? Why did you buy this thing? I didn't give the permission. Why are you doing so and so? And then after a while, this partner could also say, my wife has lost his credit card, while it's not true.
Right.
And then you're trapped.
So that domestic economic abuse.
Domestic economic abuse. So this happens all over. And it's about also the empowerment of the women.
Right.
So this is so important, empowering all the women to understand what the financial services are, why the independence, the economic independence is so important, and how to use this economic independence for the best, for the good of everybody.
Yeah. Marcus, you wanted to get in.
Big picture, the gender gap over the last decade. Over the last decade, we've gone from 3 billion people being financially excluded to 2 billion. We've made remarkable progress, but it's been a really stubborn gender gap of 9% over that decade. But in the last Global Findex, it was reduced to 6%. So that's a very significant increase. It looks great, except for one thing. It's almost exclusively India.
It's almost exclusively India.
India has made incredible progress.
Is India the new China? I mean, it came up a lot in my conversation with Mark, too. I mean, China, of course, is famed for, over decades, having lifted so many people out of poverty with their industrial policy. Is that what you're expecting in this current day in India? This kind of...
Well, India and China have basically almost so much of that progress over the last decade are explained by those two countries.
Yeah.
And on the gender gap, you're still seeing, if you go beyond India, if you go beyond China, you're seeing double-digit gender gaps, and you're seeing real discrimination and cultural issues that are really hard to overcome.
So I'm curious, where do you think the solution to kind of banking the next few billion comes from? Does it, it's a similar kind of question. I know it's everywhere. It's the public sector. It's the private sector. But if there were one thing you could wave your wand and say, this is the thing that's standing in the way for a wide swath, like what would it be?
I would say it's about climate change and empowerment, and so it's putting together the problem of climate change and the empowerment of the persons, of smallholder farmers. So it would come about what is a just transition for smallholder farmers, for instance. So smallholder farmers, for instance, wherever they are, they need loan, they need lending, but they're trapped by this climate change. Right. What you say, by flooding, by drought. So how can we help them to overcome this? So this makes me think about what we just signed last week. We just signed a loan. It's a 5th of our series. It's inclusive sustainability linked financing. So we can announce it here. We signed this loan for Al Amana, which is a Morocco-based microfinance institution that will help these smallholder farmers they serve, so they who have a loan from Al Amana, to be trained into a more accessible farming, which is going to increase productivity, but also biodiversity, thanks to all the data that are gathered, that exist, but they wouldn't have access. And how are they going to do so? through the agents of Alamana, through the banking agents who are going to be trained about all those topics. So we understood that if you touch that chain, which is those who go on the field and who also are in risk, because if their clients lose their production and lose their farming, they lose themselves.
So you just wanted to make some news there about your new partnership, and I'm going to be greedy and ask for more news. Is this a pilot? Are you going to go to more countries with this same program?
It's a fifth that we signed. So it's a pilot in Morocco.
Yes.
And we already signed one in France, one in Italy, one for a farm in France, and one in Brazil.
What's next?
And the next would be India, Indonesia.
Okay, Indonesia.
And maybe also South Africa.
Fantastic.
So, and Netherlands.
Great.
So we really are very proud of this tool because it brings just transition to the most vulnerable.
Fantastic. And Mark, last question, last word to you. Wave your magic wand. What's the one thing in the way of really this being a revolution that takes off?
Digital public infrastructure. We are seeing, first in India, then in Brazil, and now 50 countries around the world are making real significant investments in what are really the rails. And they're building the rails on which we can then build the products and services that'll reach people we've never been able to. It's very, very exciting, but there are also some downsides. We have to make sure that these investments stay innovative. You have to make sure that governments protect privacy, your question earlier. So there's a lot of issues around them, but it is the path forward to how we're going to reach those 2 billion or the 3 billion people we're trying to include.
Great. Thank you so much, both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.